In the average college football game, a 13-0 lead is by no means a done deal, but it's still substantial. It still puts you in a percentage range that you should win 80 some percent of the time. But when you get a 13-point lead and you're the Iowa Hawkeyes, and especially considering the way this rivalry game is played and the way they took that 13-0 lead, I thought, wow, Iowa's much better than Iowa State. This is a clearly controlled game. They're good. And I was surprised to see what we saw ensue in the second half.
What I'm going to say is doesn't matter to anybody. They are better than Iowa State, in my opinion. And we can run through some stuff. I mean, I had a 4.5 hour post game with Coach Patterson Saturday. So, and we've been publishing segments from that show on our channel from the Hawkeye of the Storm regarding some of the controversy, some of the blunders. But first of all, score should have been 21-0. At a minimum, should have been 17-0. And at that point, when it's 17-0, I would say the game's over at that point. The game keeps being played. Iowa lost a 17-0 lead Northwestern back in 2020. But not just Iowa. Historically, the odds go up exponentially when you take a 3-possession lead. And when you have multiple trips inside the 10, inside the 5, and you don't convert touchdowns, you settle for field goals, you're asking for problems. And I said it at the time. I said, this happens, right? Like a lot of college football fans watch games like we saw on Saturday, and they say, boy, I hope that doesn't come back to bite them. I say that all the time. But it's rare that it actually comes back to bite a team. You know, like in a situation like this, normally a 13-point lead is good enough. And then you forget about the mismanagement. You forget about the lack of execution in key spots. In this case, it came back to bite them. And there were a number of plays throughout the game, Mark, more than I can remember in recent history for an Iowa Hawkeye game, that if you take one play away or just flip the result of that one play, Iowa wins. I mean, literally. I mean, hey, how about a 54-yard field goal from a guy who missed a kick from inside 40 earlier, about 40 earlier? How about a 54-yard field goal being missed? He misses that field goal, game's over. Game's over. Or if Iowa gets one more first down on that final drive, game's over. I would venture to say if Jalen Knoll doesn't pop off that big play, but credit to Iowa State, great play down the sidelines. And Iowa's defense has things to improve upon, gave up big plays. Xavier Wampa got pulled. They got some problems in the back end, giving up explosive plays. But, Mark, I never for a second, we had a heated debate with Levi Stevenson last week. You and I both know that I have never, including this season, doubted Iowa State's ability to make big plays. And I said that to our people all week long. I said, I know the matchup looks favorable. I think Iowa's going to win. They're in Kinnick. I think they're the better overall team. I stand by that. I think they're the more complete team. And I think by the time we hit late November, they'll be a better team. But the problem becomes when you let one or two big plays occur with a defense that, you know, its values are limiting explosive plays, especially a one-play 75-yard drive. I mean, you just can't have that happen. You just can't have that happen, especially a week removed from where Iowa State started the season with a 2-play 80-yard drive or whatever it was, 75-yard drive. There are so many things, and those are just a couple of the plays that if you just reverse them, or how about Cade McNamara inside the 5, looking to the motion man who was wide freaking open in the corner for a touchdown. Wide open. Jacob Gill's wide open. That's not like, well, you know, he could have maybe fit it in there. The dude was standing by himself. Motion man. Both DBs followed the outside receiver inside. Jacob Gill is standing in the corner of the end zone. And by the way, Jacob Gill is, I think, what we expected him to be, the most complete receiver on the team. And yet Cade never looks his direction. They settle for a field goal, and there's the difference in the game. So many of those plays occurred, in addition to the many game management coaching blunders, not to mention the quarterback problems, but the coaching blunders that we saw on Saturday. So I know this is a Troy Week show, but Mark, you and I have not had a chance to really dissect this game. So you feel free to take this conversation where you please, but this has been, I think Saturday, looking back, is one of the most disappointing performances and results that I can remember. It's different than when they've gotten like pummeled, like when they got pummeled by even Purdue at home, or they got pummeled at Wisconsin, or they got pummeled last year 3 different times in games against top 25 opponents. They got shut out in every game. They just got beat. Saturday, they did almost everything right, and they lost in ways that are unacceptable for any Iowa team to lose, let alone any college football team. For Iowa team that's predicated on discipline and game management and limiting explosive plays, unacceptable. So lots to improve upon, and the Cyhawk game is one game, but it leaves very little margin for error if you're talking about playoff aspirations.
Okay, so I'm going to go through unit by unit, and we will start with the coaching staff, because I think it's easy to start at quarterback. But since you mentioned mismanagement of a game, and again, this team was just ripping off runs at 20 and 30 and 40 yards a clip, especially in the first half, and had control of a game. And really everything that you just pointed out in regards to game control by Iowa, again, it's amplified because of what Iowa's been able to do defensively, that those certainties are just ramped up past 90%, or should have been. Okay, when we start with game management, yes, Kirk mentioned today the red zone opportunities, getting the ball inside the red zone umpteen times and not converting touchdowns. That for some reason, that didn't seem to be an emphasis that he would have brought up in previous years. Need to score touchdowns. Didn't hear that before out of him, but the need to score touchdowns now, and it is different just hitting the fringe of the red zone versus inside the 5 and the 10-yard line. Those have to be cashed in. So where are your coaching blunders? Are they just specifically that they should be cashing in? They shouldn't have issues on the back end of the defense blowing coverages? Or they're more?
No, those are problems, right? Like I said it right after the game was over. I say I think the biggest plays that impacted this game were not executing inside the 5. Like we get first down at the 3. Come on, get in the end zone. Get in the end zone, especially when you have a 230-pound back that's been breaking off runs all day. Now, I understand he was taken out in those situations, probably because he just broke off huge runs. But the other one of them was a turnover, that they got the ball inside the 15 and they failed to execute. So no excuse there. Let me give you, and I say coaching blunders. No, I'm not talking about execution. All right. Players play, right? And execution comes down to player execution. Coaching is absolutely involved. So I'm not taking the blame away from the coaches as it relates to what you brought up, giving up big plays, executing inside the 5, executing inside the red zone. When I talk about game management, I'm talking about decisions, play calling, clock management, timeout management. I mean, blunder after blunder after blunder in this game, literally. And people, like, there might be 1 or 2 of these. I got 5 written down, 5 big ones that just came to mind. I didn't even go back. Like, I haven't went back and watched the game, and I don't plan to do that. I haven't. And these are just ones that come to mind without going back and analyzing it. We'll start with the big one that everybody wants to talk about. I don't even think it's the biggest blunder. Like, it may have been the most impactful blunder, but I don't even think it's the biggest blunder or the dumbest blunder. And by the way, none of these are personal attacks on anybody. I want to preface that, right? When I say dumb, stupid, whatever, the decisions, the mistakes equate to what I'm talking about. The 2-point play. You don't chase points. You're up 19-7, 5 minutes to go in the third. And when it occurred, I said, hold on a second. This is an Iowa team that has struggled in the red zone. Remember, that touchdown that they went for 2 on was in the third quarter. They had already settled for 3 2 different times inside the 5. What makes you think that if you can't get a touchdown in a 4-play series or a 3-play series, 2 other occasions, that you're going to execute on 1? Now, if you have some great play in your back pocket, fine. But what do? They go fade to a true freshman receiver against a very solid IOSU DB room. Give me a break. 19-7, you're chasing points. And for people that don't know what chasing points means, all right, I guarantee you Iowa has an analytics person. They have to. Every team does. And I'm not talking about Don Patterson, who's giving them, game by game analytics. I'm talking about in the moment, time, clock management. Whoever that is needs to be fired, and should have been fired probably 2 years ago. It has been a disaster as it relates to game management, timeout management, clock management for years. And it's gone largely unnoticed because Iowa's gotten away with a lot of this stuff. But that is ridiculous. You don't go for 2 up 19-7 with 5 minutes to go in the third. And I'm no expert in this field, but 5 minutes to go in the third. I'm thinking to myself, you either kick an extra point, you're up 20-7, or you go for 2, you're up 21-7, maybe. But if you kick an extra point, you're up a touchdown, field goal. Does Iowa State have time for 3 possessions? Yeah. Yeah. In fact, the possession before, Iowa State scored a touchdown. Iowa responded. So it was clear, and they went down the field relatively quickly in that early possession in the third quarter to score, and Iowa returned the favor. But you don't chase points. Get up 20-7. And hindsight's 20/20, but I said it when it happened. That last field goal would have been to tie. And who knows how the rest of the game, other things could change based on the momentum of the PAT. Who knows? But just from a scoring standpoint, 5 minutes left to go in the third. You do
Can
not
we
go
stay
for
on the chasing points angle? I just want to
Yeah.
give my 2 cents on that. So I was sitting there watching the game, same thing going through my mind. Number one, my thought was, I don't chase points. You don't chase points. And just to give a bit of a add-on definition to what Corey gave, folks, chasing points means that if you're so early in the game where you're not figuring out time and scenarios yet, it's one thing if there's 90 seconds left in the game and you're adding up, okay, this is likely the last score, or we're defending against the last score. Let's go up 8, or whatever the key number is. Let's go up 4 instead of 3. Those sorts of things. But when you have no idea what the course of the game is going to be, there's so much time left in the game, you don't chase points, especially when you're a defensive minded team that just went to experience those 2 possessions inside the 5-yard line. So number one, I thought, yeah, I'm not a big believer in chasing points. Number two, Iowa doesn't seem to be like a team that typically chases points. So that seemed uncharacteristic of them.
They don't understand the 2-point conversion premise. Okay. They don't. Because let me go back to 2017 for a second. Iowa lost to Purdue and Kinnick, and something somewhat similar happened late in the fourth quarter. And this is something I called to mind right after the game. Iowa's down by 15. They score a touchdown. They got like a minute and a half left. Whatever it is. I think they had timeouts. They score a touchdown. What do you think you do when you're up 9 in that situation? What do you do, Mark? What do you do?
Wait a minute. They're down 9?
You're down 15. You score a touchdown.
Yes,
what do you do with the extra
9.
point? You go for 2 or do you kick the extra point?
I'm going to go for 2.
When you're down 9?
Well, you're going to take it to 7. No, not if you're down 9 after scoring the touchdown.
Correct. You're going to kick the extra point.
Sure.
Get it to 8. Stay alive.
Yes.
And then save that 2-point conversion for a theoretical score at the end. You're not gonna play yourself out with a minute and a half to go.
Yes,
what
you've
did Iowa
ended the
do?
game.
Yeah. What did Iowa do? They went for 2, didn't get it. Game over. Game's over. You just ended the game. You just ended the game. So that's what they did. So fans should have no faith in Iowa's ability to evaluate when to call a 2-point conversion. Do I think Tim Lester had some say in that? Maybe, but history would tell me they have been inept with calling 2-point plays and executing 2-point plays since well before Tim Lester. And ultimately, Mark, whose decision is it whether Iowa goes for 2 or 1 in really any circumstance? Whose ultimate decision is that?
Kirk Ferentz.
That's the head coach. That is the head coach. Anybody wants to deny that or argue that, I would almost guarantee you if you asked Kirk plainly who made that call, he would say him. And he should, right? Ultimately,
Yes.
even if Tim Lester recommended it, that is a big enough decision that has to go through Kirk. So that's number one. And it was a bad call, and that may be on Tim Lester, but ultimately it's Kirk's position to say, what do we have for a 2-point play? And does he like the 2-point play? But again, it shouldn't have even come to that because they should have not considered it with 5 minutes left in the third. 5 minutes left in the fourth is a totally different animal.
And two other points on the blown call there would be, number one, you don't have a quarterback who's exactly carving it up. He's not exactly a hot hand.
He wasn't
So
doing anything.
why
He
are you
wasn't doing anything.
trusting your quarterback on a 2-point conversion?
He had a really good first quarter, but they had like 7 passing yards in the second quarter. I mean, they hadn't done anything.
Yes, this is not a pass offense that you trust on a 2-point conversion. Number one. Number two, if that is your best play, and that certainly I hope is not their best 2-point play, why would you then use it if you are anticipating that you're going to be in the type game that you needed that 2-point conversion? If you're going to be in that type game, you're going to need a 2-point conversion possibly at the end of the game. And you just wasted your 2-point conversion play, your best one.
Well, if that's their best one, I again, it doesn't matter how you spin it. It was a mistake. Okay. And I don't even think it's like I say, I don't think it was the dumbest mistake. I think it may have been the most impactful mistake, but I don't think it was the dumbest. Let me tell you the second one. This is not one play. But how about this? Iowa had 9 snaps. 9 snaps from inside the 6-yard line. They ran the ball 3 times out of 9 snaps inside the 6. 6 passes, 3 runs. Now
Wow.
there's a share of blame on the play caller for that. So it's not that I don't think comes down to just Kirk Ferentz. However, we talk about how in big moments, Kirk Ferentz is not going to micromanage every play that Tim Lester or Brian Ferentz or Ken O'Keefe is calling. But in big moments, a head coach may dictate, as Don Patterson has said a million times, so we're not allowed to talk about the game. We're not allowed to talk about the game. That means the Cyclones are living. When have I said anything critical about the Cyclones? I complimented them at the outset. I'm talking about a disturbing trend with mismanaged plays and situations that came to a head in a big rivalry game Saturday. It has nothing to do with letting Iowa State. That's a ridiculous comment.
Yeah. So let me extend on that. So when it comes to topic selection and understanding what's important and what's not, I will defend Corey and myself in that category. Let's understand, we're talking about the Cy-Hawk game. We're talking about 2 teams that could compete for a college football playoff rivalry game. We're talking about Troy this week, 23-point favorite is Iowa. If they have issues in that game and lose that game, well, then they've got bigger issues. Then we're really going off the rails. So not that they can look past that game, but we are not playing the game here. So we can somewhat look past the Troy game and again, give attention to one of the biggest games of the year, especially since it was not a 31-7 loss. It was a game that could have been avoided in terms of it being in the loss column.
And my job when I come on this show or on my show is to speak my mind about what's going to happen, what I think is going to happen, or what happened. So if I come on here and you throw me a bunch of softballs and I doop-de-doop through this whole show, Mark, then I have completely forsaken the integrity of what I try to stand for as it relates to my job with this unorthodox way of covering Iowa. All right. Because I'm not, we've talked about this. I'm not an orthodox. That's not the right word. I'm not your
You're not a traditional
media outlet right now as it relates to Iowa football, and I don't plan to be. So this is my job. I'm going to be critical whether you like it or not. People don't have to listen to it. But let me just make this very clear. 9 snaps inside the 6-yard line, 6 passes, 3 runs. This is for a team that could not throw to save their lives after the first quarter and was running all over Iowa State, ran for over 200 yards. And we've been touting the running back room and the depth in that room. That's getting cute and that's getting foolish. That is a blunder. Okay. Let me go number 3. By the way, no particular order here. Let's go number 3. And now we start getting to the more consequential. Well, before we can get to more consequential things, let me give you the biggest mind-blowing, mind-numbing blunder that we published a segment cut out from our post-game show on the channel here. Maybe 36 hours ago. Last I checked, it's got over 20,000 views. So this is something people are talking about, people are listening to. So it's worth repeating and talking about briefly with you here. Okay. It's not insignificant because, again, this is a trend. And I brought it up. It got brought up, by a caller late in the show. I didn't even notice it because CBS missed it. CBS missed it. Iowa had late in the first quarter. All right. Let me pull up the exact play-by-play just so that I'm not I don't want anybody to come after me later and say, wow, you misquoted what actually happened. All right. Play-by-play into the first quarter. Iowa has the ball inside the 10, right? So inside the 10, pull up into the first quarter. Hayden Large, you may remember it. Iowa, good play call, by the way. They bring the tight end who is also kind of what do they call that? An H-back. They bring Hayden Large over as the fullback, and they hand it to him for a first down. That put the ball at the Iowa State 3. The Iowa State 3. First down and goal. First and goal, Mark. At the 3. What happens on a first down in college? What happens? Clock stops, right?
Sure.
Clock stops briefly. Okay.
Well, the clock stops
while they're moving the chains. Yeah, while they're moving the chains, resetting.
Yes.
So they hand it off. Iowa calls a timeout.
Wait, how much time's left in the? So this is in the first quarter.
First half.
Wait a minute, and this is important because before the 2-minute timeout, as I understand it, they've reverted to pro rules, and the clock should be rolling. If it's before the 2-minute timeout.
This is a minute 33 to go.
Okay. So yes.
First down. Iowa runs for a first down with Hayden Large. Iowa calls a timeout with a minute 33 to go. So first of all, that's a little odd. But this is a little odd, right? I don't need to explain this to everybody, right? Mark, you know why it's odd. But okay, fine. Whatever. Second and goal. They run with LaShawn Williams first and goal. They have first and goal. Cade McNamara passing complete. Minute 30 to go. So they're not running any clock off in between, right? Second and goal. LaShawn Williams runs for no gain to the Iowa State 3. Minute 21. So 5 seconds runs off the clock. Timeout Iowa. Third and goal at the Iowa State 3. Third and goal. Third and goal. I don't know how to explain. Mark, this is not normal. This is not normal behavior. You called a timeout. So let's just break this down. And then, of course, on they call a pass play on third and goal, incomplete, and kick a field goal with a minute 11 to go. So
I understand it didn't come back to bite them.
It should have.
But
the guy doinked a field goal. He doinked a field goal.
But against a lot of other teams, you would have given them 70 seconds on the clock that you shouldn't have to drive back down the field.
What I just want to know, Mark, explain to me how you could reason your way around the criticism that we're lobbying on that specifically. And I know some people say you're whining, you're complaining. Okay, fine. I'm going to continue to whine and complain about it because it is a microcosm. But tell me how you could possibly argue or reason your way around the criticism about what we just talked about.
Well, you can't, because we're talking about individuals that are supposed to be expert at what they do, and then they're being paid millions of dollars to get it right.
CBS thought Iowa State called the timeout. That's why I didn't notice it. They actually queued it up. They said Iowa State calls a timeout because they even knew if you're Iowa, there's no way you're calling the timeout. It's got to be Iowa State, because in a situation like that, Mark, goal to go, we want the ball back. They can't get another first down barring a penalty anyways. So we're going to call a timeout to conserve time for us. But no, Iowa calls a timeout. Why would you call a timeout? Like, even if it was somebody said, well, maybe they didn't like the play. If they didn't like the play with a minute 26 to go, first of all, maybe they wanted to get a play call in. Okay, fine. Minute 26 to go, they wanted to get a play call in. Then you would let the clock run all the way down. Then you would call a timeout.
Yep.
That way you've milked the entire clock. You've stopped the clock. Then you get your play in. Then you run the play. You don't call a timeout immediately. It's like they were trying to conserve time for themselves for no purpose. There's no reason behind it.
It's insanity.
It is
It really
insanity.
is.
It really is. It's
I watch the game, but I don't watch it as intently as you. And I watch two games at the same time, so I missed on that whole sequence
I did too.
of them really, yes,
I,
botching the clock management. That's
and
horrible.
Thank you. And I know some people will say I've already had people say this. I published one video Sunday early in the day, and people were already saying, "You're beating a dead horse." What are you talking about? The game just finished last night, and we're not supposed to talk about it? And it's Troy week. It's Troy week. And if this was an off day, fine. But these things have been happening. These things have been occurring. You just haven't noticed them because Iowa, more often than not, gets away with them. This has happened a number of times. 2021 against Penn State. Okay. Taking a knee and then punting. That could be more, I guess you could explain that more than other things because people would view Iowa's punter as a weapon, but that's just insane. It just really is insane and shows the level of ineptitude. 2021, I believe, against Minnesota. There was a blunder. People can go back and check it at the very tail end of that game that nearly cost them the game, that gave Minnesota a chance when they shouldn't have had a chance. They tried, I believe they intentionally didn't go in the end zone, and it gave Tanner Morgan a chance to go down. And it didn't come back to bite him, but it would have been talked about had it initiated a loss. All right.
In this new Big Ten, they're going to see a whole lot more Ohio State, USC, and Oregon, and they don't want to see those teams with the ball with a minute left and a half.
I don't. Yeah, it's incredible. So let me. And again, they could have very easily gotten away with all of this Saturday. Like I say, how many different plays? One play goes a different way, they're winning the game anyways. Insane. How about this one? Let me pull up the play-by-play as well. We're 3/5 through the way through this. And if people are bored by it, they can log off. But
I enjoy this. I love it.
This is fascinating to me. It's maddening.
Yeah.
It's also fascinating. Okay, Iowa's last real possession. I'm not talking about the Hail Mary play. Iowa's last real possession, all right? They get a first down. Caleb Johnson looked really good, by the way. I thought keeping the legs churning. And I kind of backpedaled on some things I said. I thought he looked more complete. Certainly the big runs in his speed, but his ability to play through contact was impressive to me on Saturday. But Iowa gets a first down. They got handed a third and one. Good spot, right? You don't want first down. They got 3rd and 1, which got them an opportunity to run more clock off inside the 2-minute warning with 1:59 to go. Or excuse me, 3rd and 1 with 2-minute warning. Then they get a first down on a Cade McNamara sneak. First down and goal, or first down at the Iowa 44. Caleb Johnson runs for 3 yards. Timeout Iowa. That's got to be a mistake. Yeah, that's got to be a mistake. So it says Iowa on the ESPN play-by-play, but that's mistaken because Iowa State was calling timeouts. Let's hope Iowa State called those timeouts.
Then we're really going to bury him.
Yep, timeout Iowa State with 1:29. So 2nd and 7, Caleb Johnson runs for a 1-yard loss back to the Iowa 46. Another timeout by Iowa State. 3rd and 8, Caleb Johnson runs for no gain. So they're at their own 46-yard line with a freshman punter who's, no question about it, has got a big leg, but he's kicking into the wind. 46-yard line. So you're punting here, right? You're punting on 4th and 8, theoretically. What did Iowa do? You remember what they did, Mark?
No.
They let the clock run down, as they should have.
Yeah.
But with 40 seconds, they didn't call a timeout. They took a delay of game.
Oh.
They took a delay of game that puts them back at their own 41. What happens? Reese Dakin, not a bad punt, but he's punting into the wind, 37-yard punt, and it's fair caught at the 22. Now, Kirk was asked about this after the game, and Kirk acted bewildered by the question, like, well, we got a guy who can punt at 60 yards. So we're banking on a freshman punter getting max leg in a huge moment, in a huge spot, into the wind late in the ball game. As opposed to just calling it. You're trying to call. So why would you take the delay of game to get an extra second, maybe get an extra second. All you got to say to the official is timeout with 1 second. That's what we're doing. Timeout with 1 second. We're not taking a delay game. We had timeouts. Iowa had timeouts. Instead, they take the delay game, cost themselves 5 yards. Iowa State gets the extra 5 yards. And believe me, those 5 yards cost them.
Yeah.
Because theoretically, the same plays happen. Mr. Kyle Conradi would have had a 59-yard field goal. That changes the game. That changes the game. Dumb penalty, doesn't make any sense, doesn't do anything. Doesn't do anything. Like, that's another thing. Like, you could say, well, it probably didn't matter because, yeah, you could kick it long. What is the point? Why? You actually think it was helping your guy putting yourself back at your own 41? There's no way you try to reason that it's actually helping Reese Dakin to have 60 yards of real field to work with. And Reese has done a great job.
Yeah, you do that if you're at the Iowa State 35 or maybe even the 40, so he can just air it out.
Correct. Yeah. Not at your own 40, not at your own 45. No. Mark, these are ridiculous.
I did not soak all these factors up.
And let me go with a final one. And this is the only one that I think really can be argued substantially that maybe I'm wrong on this. So I won't even necessarily quantify it as a blunder. But I do think the wrong decision was made. And Coach Patterson kind of disagrees with me on this. But into the game, Max White runs out of bounds with 1 second to go. 1 second to go. And I was at they're at the, let's see, where are they at here? Iowa State 49.
Yep.
1 second to go. I'm kicking a field goal in that position. I know it's a 66-yarder, and it's going to the north. But I can tell you, and this is going back to the summer, I talked during the summer about the rave reviews that I heard regarding Iowa's kicker, Drew Stevens. And I know that kid was making 65-yarders in practice in that direction. So say what you want about the wind. The wind was not a big factor Saturday. He was making 65-yarders that I was told would have been good from 70. Now, that would have set an NCAA record, okay? So a 66-yarder, yeah. How likely is that to work? It's very slim. Is it maybe less than 1%? But I will take that any day of the week over seeing Cade McNamara, who can't throw it 55 yards, throwing 10 yards short. Now, there's always a chance at PI. I get that. There's a chance at PI. So I understand the argument on the other end of this. So I'm not going to necessarily qualify that as a blunder because there is a chance at PI and there's a chance maybe you get a lateral. But I in the moment, I was like, I didn't know where he went out of bounds because I saw Max White go out of bounds. And I'm like, man, they're in Iowa State territory. I was hoping it was like the 44, not the 49, because then I think you'd have to kick it at 61. You just have to. At 65, 66, I get that would be long. That would be long. I just know he has made those kicks in summer conditions in that stadium that would have been good from 70. And he made kicks from 65. Totally different in a game, I get it, but I'd rather that be on the leg of Drew Stevens than be on the arm of Cade McNamara. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the other ones, I think the other ones are darn near inexcusable and indefensible.
Yeah. Well, the timing situation inside the 5-yard line at the end of the half is completely a botched situation.
Incredible.
The play calls are a logically botched situation. It's not like a black and white, right or wrong, but basically you add up all the logical conclusions of the style of offense, what works for them, what has worked for them on that day, all of that. Yeah, and the 2-point conversion's stupid. And again, they're not a passing offense. That's an egregious call. Yeah. Wow.
And I would argue that the delay of game is pretty dumb. I just think that's dumb.
Well, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
To me, why cost your defense 5 extra yards? You don't have reason to think Dakin's going to be punting it. Like, it was fielded outside the 20. You need Iowa State to have all the field. All they needed was field goal range, and they got it.
Yeah.
They got it.
And you did what was the most logical thing, and to say, if everything else stays the same, it's at the 17-yard line where they would have set up. But having your punter closer to that end of the field, who knows what he would have done, knowing that, I can reach the 5-yard line from here. I can.
I don't know.
Who knows?
Like they had been, Mark, you saw it in the first. He was punting like Torrey Taylor at times from short distances inside the 10. Like they just look like vintage Iowa with their gunners down the field, and John Nestor and Devin Hilson. I know Devin Hilson had the mess up there at the end of the half on the blocked kick, or the blocked roughing the punter penalty that could have cost them a field goal as well. And you could argue that was a bad play call to go after the punter, but they were really good with getting with Dakin directing those punts and Iowa's gunners going after there. I don't know why you would want to push them further out and not even give your gunning team an opportunity to really put them up against the wall and make them need to gain. Because here's the other thing about it. I know Iowa State fielded a punt, fair caught a punt at the 4 because of how well Iowa was punting. But they used to say heels on the 8, let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's maybe not, it's more like heels on the 6, 7. But the opportunity that Dakin would have had to pin them inside the 10, that would have been a tall order for them to get out of that position. But it's totally different when they get the ball basically like you punted into the end zone. That's basically what they did. I mean, they got the ball to 23, I think I said.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have gotten the ball to 25 if Dakin had punted it into the end zone.
I'm right there with you.
It's my soapbox, Mark, but
I enjoyed that. That was people should appreciate. They should appreciate the care in which you went through all those points and have made your case, because it's a near rock solid case. Now, when it comes to play calling, sure, there's some nuance there and some argument, but the argument there, of course, the logic points to your argument of run heavy. That's what you're doing well. The throw game was not working, etc. But the rest of it's the timing situations and the delay of game. All that is just airtight. So we didn't hear any of that after the game or during today's news conference.
Somebody asked, I think it was Chad Leisico, the Des Moines Register, after the Iowa game Saturday, did ask about the delay of game. Kirk kind of acted like, well, what are you talking about? Am I missing something there? Okay. He made the comment about Dakin being able to kick 60 yards. I don't criticize Chad or anybody in the Iowa media for not pressing on that in that moment right after a game. But to me, that answer doesn't explain the situation appropriately and effectively. I didn't hear any questions. I did watch Kirk's press conference today. I didn't hear any questions about the other things. And if for people to say, well, why would they ask a question? Why would you ask a question on Tuesday about things that happened Saturday? Because Kirk's had an opportunity to go look at the tape and a couple of days to digest what happened. But I didn't notice any of those questions today.